Welcome to the 30-minute acrylic portrait, where we paint an acrylic portrait in about a half an hour. Hope you're doing well today, and I'd encourage you to try one of these painting exercises. See what you would accomplish in a short amount of time, and in the efficiency that you'll gain in doing these quick 30-minute acrylic portraits, your freehand painting skills will improve. You'll be able to see likenesses much more readily on the portraits that take you longer, where you can put in many layers and glazes. But it's also going to maybe free you up from some creative doldrums where you feel kind of stuck and you don't know what to paint next. This is just a great way to break into it, because with that 30-minute time constraint, you just kind of say whatever is going to be will be. You do your best work, you say a prayer, trust that God will help you to do something that looks like a portrait within 30 minutes. But again, it's a great exercise to really develop your skills, and you might surprise yourself at what you can accomplish in just 30 minutes. So this is what I have here today. I'm working on a portrait of a woman praying, and God showed me that I really need to be doing paintings of people praying, so I want to continue in that. And we have this woman here with some wonderful light on her face, a chiaroscuro effect of light shining on her forehead and nose and her hands. I love the pose where her hands are folded and she's looking downward, and it's kind of just an old world image that you'd see maybe in a painting from several centuries ago. Kind of reminds me of something by Jan Vermeer or other old masters. So in preparation of that, I have a ground on this 8x10 canvas. It's just kind of a ultramarine blue, raw umber dark, alizarin crimson glaze with a bit of raw sienna, and I think it's going to make a fantastic background with plenty of contrast for this image. So if you'd like to paint along with, that would be great. And here's the colors I'm going to be using. I have ivory black, raw umber dark, burnt sienna, raw sienna, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and I have alizarin crimson. I have pyrrole orange, Indian yellow, titanium white, and then this is peach tone, and this is titanium matte. So they're kind of some flesh tones that just make it easier for a 30-minute portrait than having to mix it out of titanium white and muddying up my white for my highlights. I don't want to do that, so I've reserved these colors for that purpose. So let's get started. I'm going to dive in here with a word of prayer, and we'll dive right into the painting process. So Father, I ask a blessing on this painting. Bless the students who are watching. I pray that this would be beneficial for them, that they would be able to learn some techniques that they can use in their portraits, and maybe try one of these 30-minute portraits out and see what they can accomplish, grow in their skills. Bless them, keep them safe, healthy, and productive in their work. And bless this painting, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, I've got my timer on here, so it's just so you know that I'm painting this real-time alla prima, freehand, no video editing, except for just putting in the intros and outros at the end. But I'm going to set this timer here for 30 minutes, and when that timer chimes, I'm going to take my hands off the painting, and just whatever we have is what we have. So let's dive in here. The first step, and we have an assortment of brushes. I got some flats and filberts and rounds. That's what you want to use for a painting like this. Just get a bunch of brushes that'll work for you. And we're going to start with a nice round brush here. This is a size 10, I believe, and I just want to block in the composition. And I'm going to do that using, I have a darker color. We'll go with some ivory black for this, and a little bit of raw umber dark, and we just want to block in that composition. All right, dilute this with some matte medium, make it nice and fluid, and I should be able to see this on top of my sketch, or on top of my ground, without it being too strong and overt. So it looks like her neck kind of comes up high in this image, and it is cropped off here, and I want to make sure I'm getting, you know, these shapes. So I'm basically just looking for kind of the negative spaces, and the head, like I said, is quite cropped. It comes down to maybe about here, and just kind of getting the overall sense of what's happening, the visual weight. And yeah, we don't want her quite centered. I like the idea of her being slightly off center, so just move that over a bit. And again, just want to establish that visual weight, what's going on here. Maybe just make this a little bit lighter so it's easier to adjust it if I need to. I'll add a bit of matte medium to this. Okay, that'll work. I just want to get kind of the visual weight of the nose, and we got the hands maybe about here. Now they're a little off center, so I want to make sure I'm plotting them out. And then we got the clothing here. And there's going to be, quite a bit of negative space on this, but in this sense, I like that. I want to have that little bit of negative space and just to be a little mystery in this image here. All right. So now we're going to just kind of plot in the shape of her bonnet or shawl or whatever you call that. And this is going to leave a nice oval shape then for her face. And then this is going to, we're going to need to, kind of roughly get in the semblance of where her hands are. So we have her wrist down here. This will be a little more of a challenging portrait because I've got the hands in it and just a bit more complexity to it. All right, so we got the nose and we get those major lines, and we're kind of blocking a little bit of the structure of the shading on her face. So we have just a bit of the shadows here, and we'll just kind of block roughly where those might go. Chin, maybe about here, and I want to make sure her head is appropriately sized. I might just zoom in a little bit on this so I can adjust it for what I'm actually painting at the moment. Okay, a little bit of her hair right there. And again, I want to leave just a bit of room for the shawl back here. I do want those hands just slightly off center. All right, so just kind of measuring the angles and seeing if I have them similar. That's the main thing, is to really get your angles correct. We have just a bit of that kind of bun area on the top. Then once I feel like I've got this composition locked in close enough, I will start to actually block in some of the forms then for this and get some of the highlights. So let's work in first with the highlights, and we're going to take some of this raw titanium matte and a little bit of the peach tone, but we're going to need to warm this up. So we add some raw sienna to it as well, and just really warm up that tone. You have to paint more opaquely for this kind of a format. And then what I want to do, if I feel like I've got a good tone, I'm just going to really spray my palette, keep it nice and fluid. That's good to keep your paint from drying out. Okay, so I just kind of hold this up and see if I got a color I like. Maybe I'll just add a bit of burnt sienna to it just to warm it up. And a touch of Indian yellow. Okay, so with that, a little more burnt sienna. Okay, with that, let's put this in here and start getting in some highlights. So it's going to be pretty stark. The contrast to be very, very stark right now. And I'm going to add some more raw sienna because it's a very opaque pigment and I need this to cover fairly quickly. Yeah, let's switch to a different brush. Actually, let's go with a smaller flat brush. This one right here. And we'll just kind of block in with that. We'll block in her forehead. I can use a chiseled edge of it to just kind of get a semblance of what's going on. And then we'll work in some of these other tones. I might have to go just a little bit darker and add some burnt sienna, raw sienna to this. Because the background's so dark, it has to be able to overcome that. So we're blocking in some of the structure here of her forehead and the nose, and again, kind of a nice chiaroscuro effect here. The forehead, even the hair structure. Right. Her chin maybe is catching a bit of the light, and there's just ever so slightly a little bit on her lips. Now let's block in some of the shapes of the hand. So we're trying to get in some of the knuckles, and then this structure right here of her forearm and her wrist. A little bit more of a yellowish color. I'll just add a bit of Indian yellow to this, and raw sienna, and then some burnt sienna, and we'll just kind of make it a little more yellow down there. All right. Now let's add some raw umber dark to this. We'll get some of the darker colors. Raw umber dark and burnt sienna. And we'll just block this in right here, and you get some darker tones. Maybe a little darker yet. A little more burnt sienna. Really to get that nice chiaroscuro effect here. Just have to block in something pretty simple right now for her eyes and that area. All right, we'll continue this into this area. Now we can add a bit to her chin, just try to get that visual weight there. Under her nose, get that main dark color under there. And a little bit of a blend, where we can add some pyro orange and Indian yellow to the mix, and just get a bit of a blend right here. Bit of a blend up there, a little bit lighter. Put in just the suggestion of her eyes. We'll wipe off the brush and add some raw umber dark to this, and we'll just kind of darken in this eyebrow area here and bring that out. All right, now gonna get a kind of a yellowish tint here for her hand. We just want to darken that with some raw umber dark and a bit of Indian yellow. It has a little more of that yellowish tint, so we bring this into the mix. A little more raw umber dark and Indian yellow. Just bring that in. We want to get some good contrast. Now we want to kind of establish the clothing. All right. And we'll use some burnt sienna, add that to the mix, and we're going to just bring out the contrast on her fingers ever so slightly. Back to this area on her cheek, blend that a little bit. Okay, now let's blocking some of the white for her bonnet. So we take some titanium white and just tone it down with a bit of raw umber dark, so it's not too stark of a contrast. And that is a good approach. We'll add that to the top and just start to block this in here. A lot more detail and color difference in this than the usual portrait that I would do. Okay, we're going to go with a slightly darker color, adding a bit of ivory black and ultramarine blue. And I'll need some alizarin crimson just to compensate for that raw umber dark. I used too much. That's all right. Add a little raw sienna just to warm it up a bit. And we'll place that right here. Get kind of this mid-tone in the center. Blend that out a bit. And get some more ivory black on the edge. And then we'll put that up on the top right there and see how that looks. All right, and now leave a little bit of room for a cooler color. So I'm going to take some titanium white and just a bit of phthalo and ultramarine blue. We'll put that in the back, maybe a little more ultramarine blue here, just to get the colors a bit cooler right there in the back. Now let's get a nice shape here for the edge of this bonnet. If you think it's called something else, just let me know. That's what I'm calling it. All right, and a little more ultramarine blue where we just darken this top part, a tiny bit of phthalo blue. Maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. It just got a bit too green. We're going to add that to the top and just kind of warm that up a bit. Something like that. Get a couple little wrinkles in there. Wipe this off, see if we can blend it out ever so slightly. All right. Just bring this blue up right into there. Looks like that shape's got to extend in there a bit. And then I'll wipe off my brush and I'll just add a couple little darker spots in here with this area that's got a bit of ivory black. Add a little raw umber dark to it as well. There we go. Okay. Now we've got that red below, and let's establish that really quick, and we'll use Pyro Orange. Pyro Orange, I like that color. It's a good robust color with a bit of alizarin crimson and some burnt sienna and some raw sienna, and we just kind of work those together. And I'm just gonna plot that in right here. Maybe a little bit more raw sienna to the mix. Yeah, it's just kind of a reddish orange color. I'm going to put that in here in a couple of key spots. Just using the chisel edge of my flat brush for this. And just a bit on the edge, we'll just let it kind of dance along here. There we are. Rinse off my brush really quick. And then let's get some ivory black and raw umber dark, and we'll just kind of put that off to the side. And we want to get this darker area here on the edge of her clothing. Just kind of fill that in so it's just a bit darker than the background. There's a bit of a contrast. Oh, I can see that there. We'll just kind of wipe that away for a moment. It's actually darker right here. It's darker right there. And that's where we want that to be. A little bit darker up here. Kind of get a bit of a lost edge on the top. A little bit of a lost edge right on the top here. Alright, we'll just blend this in using a bit of umber dark and just kind of blend it into this lighter glaze. See what happens. Get a bit of shading right there. A little bit lighter. All right. And she's got this kind of a white thing on the bonnet coming down, so we'll just use a little titanium white and then this umber dark color we have here, and we'll just kind of bring that down. A little bit of a striation. Just like that. And look at the back side. That could be a bit darker. It's in shadow. It's thicker too. All right, now let's see if we can get some more detail on her face and her hands with the time we have. So back to these other glazes with the peach tone, and I got to warm it up with some Indian yellow. And let's bring in some titanium white here. And we're just going to work in some of these highlights on her face. So titanium white and this peach tone, and we'll just kind of plot that in right here. Oh, I got to leave some room for her hair. So let's do that. Get these highlights right there on her forehead. Just work that in. And then we'll warm this up with a little pyro orange and Indian yellow. And get a couple of spots where we can just warm up this glaze a little bit and get some transitional colors into the main midtones. So you always want to think of those highlights, those midtones, and those shadows. So here we have some of the highlights, getting her nose kind of blocked in here, putting in that kind of nice nasal area. There it goes. It's good. And now let's just work in the work in these little highlights on her eyes. We just get a couple little spots there, just like that. Just a couple little spots. And then we need to put in a bit of a highlight on top of that. So I'm going to grab a lighter color right here and just drop that in on top. Get a bit of a gradient. Now we'll work in a couple of glazes around the edge. So I'm going to go with this warmer color that I actually used for her clothing, and I'm going to drop this in right here, and I just added a bit of burnt sienna to it and some raw sienna, and we'll just kind of put that in the bottom of her nose, and that nose is catching some of the light from her hand. That's why it's a little bit of an orangier color. That's why it's warmer, because it's catching that reflected light from her fingers. Just put in a bit of shading right there, and get some transitional hues right here on her face. But I do want to get a couple more highlights right here on her cheeks, so let's do that. Work into that flesh tone, add some Indian yellow and raw sienna to it, just a bit of pyro orange, and we put that in right here on the cheek area. It's a little bit light, and it's a very special area in the painting, so I want to give it a little extra attention. More titanium white on top here. Just kind of drop that in again with Indian yellow to compensate for the coolness of the titanium white, and that always helps too. Suggest a couple of wrinkles with some transverse brush strokes going the opposite direction. We don't have time to put them all in, just trying to see what I can get done in this limited time frame. If I have time, I'll get a gradient in here just at that junction between the highlights of the nose. So if we can just drop in a quick gradient here and a little more sliver of that highlight on the bottom of the nose. That would be great if we could do that. All right. Give a little bit of a warmer color right here. Now let's see if we can bring this shadow color of her eye socket down just a bit. Try to drop in a little bit of a darker color right here on that left edge of her eye, just to show the actual form of her skull underneath. And a little bit of the nostril. All right, so if we can, let's get in some work on her mouth, just to show the form of the mouth. Nose underneath. Alizarin crimson, we're going to add this to this raw umber dark mix. Just show the pursed lips here. Bit of the dimple. And let's get in some of the structure of her hair. So we're going to add a little bit of a shadow on the top here. I'm using this round brush. It's actually quite crooked. It's been sitting in my water too long, and you should see how crooked this actually is. It's crazy. It's totally out of round. Look at that. Yet I still like it because the bristles just, you know, you ever have a favorite brush where the bristles just do the right thing for you? And that's what this brush is doing. Just goes to show that God can draw a straight line with a crooked stick. You know, he can use us, broken as we are. He redeems us through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ in our behalf and his intercessory prayers for us and all of his grace. And he actually can do something wonderful with our lives, broken as we are. Yeah, I remember when I first heard that saying, God can draw a straight line with a crooked stick. And actually, he can make a crooked stick straight. But it's really a blessing to be able to paint for a living and all the wonderful things God has done in my life, even despite my failings and my sins. I thank him for his grace. Okay, so we're just adding more detail here to the hair and getting a little low on time. I'll see if I have just enough time to add some highlights to her fingers and get something going there just to give it a bit more of a semblance of a hand here. So we just put a strong highlight here representing that the ring finger. And now we have the pinky finger being represented here with a smaller shape because of the way it's bent. And then we've got this nice highlight here showing part of the other hand and the knuckles, and we'll just put in a bit of the structure of her tendons and her skin and her veins. And all it just goes to show the character that she's developed over the years. Hard work and diligence and many tears shed, many prayers offered. You can see that in her hands. You can see it in her face. We just want to capture that. Lots of love shown to her children and her grandchildren, all of those good things. All right, so we take a little raw umber dark here, and we're just going to work that in with some raw sienna and Indian yellow, and just add a couple more nuances. So we're down to about 5 minutes here. Down to about 5 minutes. We're on the home stretch. Let's see what we can get done here. You know, Jesus is coming soon, and we're on that home stretch right now too. We're on that home stretch where he could come at any time. We want to be ready for his return. Like the Bible says, our salvation is even closer than when we first believed. So we really want to focus on Jesus and focus on prayer. And you can always pray pray and ask God for the help we need. He's an ever-present help in time of trouble. Got some titanium white and Indian yellow. We're just going to add that to the tops of these fingers here and give them a little more clarity, a little more highlight. They're an important part of the picture. Let's just kind of drop that in right on the bottom, right there. Try to get a little bit more color though on that top, just get some gradients. So Indian yellow, pyro orange, and a bit of raw sienna. We just kind of work that in and just get a bit more color on those hands here. All right, and now let's get some shadows on those hands. So we take this raw umber dark and alizarin crimson. We'll just kind of block this in. Spray this palette quick and just keep these paints nice and moist. We'll just get a couple of shadows in right here, maybe about right there, in between the fingers. And we got to make sure we have enough. We have 1, 2, 3. The fourth actually could come out a little further. Try to give that a gap. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll make sure we have enough. Probably could have given them a little more of a gap, but that's all right. Doesn't always turn out just like the image. I'm going to see if I can bring this over just a bit more. Get this last finger kind of just moved over a bit to the left. A little more Indian yellow on this side, warm that up, and then some raw umber dark and burnt sienna. Maybe see just a touch of the hand here, and then a couple of darker forms on the outside edge. And just work that in. Get these shadows kind of popped in here. Blend that in a bit more. And we'll just add a little bit of shading here to the outside part here on her cheek. And then this, get a little bit of the sliver of the highlight down here on her nasolabial fold. Bit of that highlight, so we could go with a slightly warmer color. Chin catching just a bit of the light. Yeah, chin catching just a bit of the light. Bottom edge, little reflected light coming from her clothing. Get that in there. Let's need a little bit of Indian yellow for that. And we'll just see what we can get done here at the end. Finish strong. A couple of jowls here, we'll get that in. And we can put in a little bit of titanium white on this top part. Just block this in with a bit of Indian yellow. Just kind of warm that up and get that nice strong highlight here at the edge on this bonnet. Paint's getting a little thick, but it's all right. We'll use a different brush. All right, it's going to finish up until this actually stops ticking, if you'll allow me that. It's still ticking, so I'm going to keep it going just until the ticking stops, and then I'll put down my brush. I don't know, maybe it'll keep ticking for a long time. Usually I've just kind of stopped it on its own, but let's see here. Hope you'll allow me that, just to put in a little bit more, because it's still ticking. Once that ticking stops, I will put down my brush. Okay, I'm going to stop because the ticking has stopped. And so this is what we have. this is what we have here for 30 minutes. You know, we have a nice sense of the form overall. I'm very happy with it. Obviously, could have gotten a lot more done, but yeah, I'm happy with it for 30 minutes. I really find myself wanting to do more on it, you know. And that's the nice thing about a 30-minute acrylic portrait like this, is that if you like what you've painted, you're welcome to put in another half an hour, put in another hour, whatever you'd like, to just really finish it strong. And so this is what we have. Now I like the highlights on her face, the contrast, the overall sense of the form here. Obviously there's some areas that are unresolved, like this area on her bonnet, and I really would have liked to have gotten this highlight on the top of the bonnet here, blended into the shadow a bit more. But again, I'm very happy with it for the time spent. And yeah, I think it turned out well. I think it's just a really fun exercise. And again, you can do this in your studio practice. Just try it out. Take an 8x10 canvas and get a reference photo that you like and see what you can do in 30 minutes. So drop me a comment. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my channel at realisticacrylic.com. Yeah, I've been talking a little too much here, but I gotta get a sip of water. Anyway, go to realisticacrylic.com, where I have several tips and tutorials, classes for free that you can take that'll help you in your portrait painting. Many of them are for free, so check that out. But thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope to do more here for you. And yeah, look forward to seeing some of your portraits. So get in touch with me via email and send me an email with your paintings. I'd love to see them. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.